Alex, I know you're a guy that likes to fight legends, right? So, I mean, this opportunity, I got to imagine this is an exciting one for you.
Yeah, so they announced the fight around 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken. And as soon as I saw it matched up, I actually called my coach and told him that if either guy pulls off, I'd be willing to take the fight. Granted, I didn't expect it to be on like less than a week's notice. But yeah, I've been in shape. I have a lot of my guys fighting soon, and a lot of guys in Fortis are always fighting. So I've been just like training to help my training partners. At my gym, we had a local grappling tournament last Saturday, and we had 80 competitors, 80 out of my own gym. 50 of them were kids, but still a lot of adults. So we've been training our butts off, and my weight's been low, and conditioning's been super good. So it was an easy fight to take.
That's awesome. How did it all come together? I mean, did the fact that you had volunteered for it 3 months out assist in getting it done?
Not really. So it's funny, when I fought Pettis, that was another short notice one, but that week, the Saturday that I was fighting him, was our move out date. I had started training at a gym, Gracie Bartha Woodlands, when I was like 16 or 17 years old, and started there as a white belt and just like stayed the course and became like a black belt, became an instructor, then became the owner. And we had finally outgrown that location. It had been flooded twice. Like, we were ready to get out of there. So my awesome genius mogul brother, who has been doing very well for himself, started to make some money with his internet and tech work, started buying a lot of land, and he had built a big building. So we had moved our gym to a much bigger super facility that is already too filled up. But so I was facilitating the move, and that's like, and in 2020, banking on like UFC fights and gym profits, we were going to fund the build out. That didn't happen. COVID killed that and made no money at the gym. So we had to figure out our funds, but the move was all going very according to plan. And then the Pettis fight moved that 1 week back. So right after that fight, we had moved our entire gym from one spot to another. And I asked for 3 months to make sure the business side of the gym was going smooth. January was great. February was a banger. And then every month, it's just getting busier and busier. So I knew in Q1 I wouldn't be fighting. But with teaching and training, I was in good shape, and I was like hoping to fight in Q2. So like May, June, July, I wanted to be in shape going into fight camp, and that worked out so well. And just the timing was really good. We've achieved so much this year already from like a business side. And then thankfully after February, once everything was going smooth, I started like really cross-training a lot and making my trips back up to Fortis, especially with Jeff Neal and Carlos Diego Fiera being on the card. I started to make the trip up to Dallas just to train with the boys. We have one of our guys, another one of Coach Safe's students, not in the UFC yet, Cameron Graves. He's fighting on that Fury show the day after the UFC Houston card, and Dana White's going to be there, and it's a title fight. So we've been getting him ready for 5-5s. So I've been doing 5-5s with him for weeks now, and conditioning was good, weight was low, and the opportunity really presented itself.
That's awesome. With that said, I mean, let's say this was like, hey, Alex, we want you to fight this newcomer that's coming in. He's making his debut, but we got to fight for you. I mean, would you still fight? I mean, because you want to fight, or is it the opportunity to face Cowboy?
Yeah, that's very situationally based. It really depends on who, just making sure the risk is worth the reward. And in this case, like, the risk is certainly worth the reward. But, Cerrone's, maybe other than Conor McGregor, the most well-known fighter on planet Earth. He's fought the best. He's beat him. He's lost to him. He's always a guy I always enjoyed watching. And it's just cool. This is such an opportunity, like, for my career, for where I'm at now. Fighting these vets is awesome, especially while they're still in the mix. And now, as a UFC fan, I thought his fight against Sanchez was the perfect going out fight for both of them. I was kind of, it's kind of sad to see that drop off, especially with what happened with Diego. Like, I've always liked Diego a lot, and as long as martial arts has been around, there have been seedy coaches who kind of fake their way into spots, and I always built up such a resume for myself, so my students know that everything I teach them is legitimate. Like, I've been through the fire, I've competed at every level in pretty much every martial arts aspect. I've had pro boxing matches, pro kickboxing matches, submission-only black belt matches, and a bunch of MMA fights. And I just want my students and the fans to know that I've been there. I know what I'm talking about. And if there's anything I can talk about, it's MMA. And anytime I see, especially locally, there's a lot of gyms in the area, I'll really question the coaches and kind of put some pressure on them to see how legitimate they are. And I know that a lot of guys around town don't like that, but I mean, that's tough. You're only as good as your resume states. So yeah, this was a cool fight, and I don't think it's ideal for Cerrone, but But whatever, I know he's game, and I know he was motivated. Like, one thing, when I was talking to Coach Safe about this fight, he was like, Cerrone knew he could beat Sanchez. Going into this fight camp, he was pumped. I watched some of the training videos of his, and I know he's going to be coming in good shape. And I expect this fight to be a bit of a dog fight. It's going to be a fun one.
I was going to ask you because, I mean, I know what a fan you are of the sport and how much you follow it. I mean, Cowboy has had the losses, right? But it also feels like he's in one of those back against the wall kind of situations right now, right? Or he wants to prove the world. So what kind of a Cowboy are you expecting to come in there?
You know, every time I fight, when I was a regional pro, I would get these matchups and I would always envision my opponents to be like way bigger and stronger and better than they were. So I got my coach behind me, or in front of me here. One time we fought a guy named Everett. He was really tall and really big for welterweight. He actually ended up, did he bust weight, Coach? He took some time. We all had to wait like an extra hour at weigh-ins because he was cutting weight. And I remember I did the face-off and I was like, Coach, he's smaller than I thought. And Matt was like, dude, he's pretty big. I was like, yeah, but he's smaller than I thought he'd be. And I always envision these guys to be like the best possible versions and the toughest. And Cowboy, one of the best strikers in the UFC, an arguable better ground game than stand-up game. This is going to be a fun fight, a real test. You know, I always hope we stand and kickbox for 15 minutes. That's what I always hope. But I always plan on guys trying to wrestle. And I know he was training for Diego, who's a southpaw wrestler. And anytime I would fight a wrestler, there's a lot of anti-wrestling, so a lot of wrestling naturally. And then he had asked to fight Emil Meek, if I'm not mistaken. I saw a text that I don't know how legitimate it was on Reddit. But if you're asking to fight Emil Meek, that's a guy who's been held down before too. So I think Cerrone may try to wrestle a bunch, but again, prepping for this tournament and just doing the 3 months of like jiu-jitsu, gym business, I've been grappling so much and thankfully been really sharp in my striking doing all the MMA work. So I'm ready to grapple hard, to fight hard. I mean, like any fight, I expect this to go everywhere.
Yeah. Last thing for me, I would ask this would be a huge win for you, right? I mean, a big moment in your career, a big name, but you're one of the most realistic guys I've ever heard. You know, says, I don't know if I'm going to be champ or anything, but I'm going to go out there, we're going to have fun. So what would you do after this? Would you, go back into the school and wait for another legend to come around, or do you start calling out names? What's the plan after a win like this?
You know what? I'm not too sure. I also stopped, like when I had the Pettis fight, I was like, oh, am I going to fight next? And I just stopped worrying about that now. I don't know. It was funny, after March, I was checking my email 3-4 times a day, waiting for Sean Shelby to have a name and a date. And I just never would have predicted this on, 5 days' notice. That was cool. But I don't know. I'll fight the newcomers. I know there was a lot of COVID signees, and if UFC wants to hike some of those guys out, I'll certainly beat them up. The vets are fun to fight. Like those mid-level guys, they'll be in the UFC for a long time like myself. I can fight them later, So while the vets are in, I enjoy fighting the vets. Just as a fight fan and just as a martial artist, I think it's a cool test, and this is a fun one.
Just going off. Go on after you.
Thanks. In a previous interview, you mentioned that a win over Cowboy would be bittersweet. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, being just a fan of the UFC, guys like Robbie, like Diego Sanchez, like Cerrone, you want to see them retire on a high note. I'm certain, I'm realistic about when I would retire. And like I told my coach, there's 2 aspects that are going to allow me to retire. One is if I start taking excessive damage to my head, I'm out. And then 2, if I don't enjoy training in the fight camps, I'm going to stop. And that's one thing. Every fight camp, and I've had 40 of them, I've enjoyed more than the next. So that's not slowing down. But, you want to see a guy like Cerrone go out on a high note. There's only one exception to that, and that's if he fights a teammate or myself. And I'm not trying to kill him on Saturday. He can have a retirement fight after that if he wants. But that's the bittersweet kind of aspect to it. You got to pay respects to these guys, but not if you're fighting. There's just no chance. If I let my guard down for a second or give him too much credit, then that's a failure in my armor. So I'm going in there for the kill.
I was just curious, going off you saying it's fun to fight the vets as a fan of the sport itself. What would it mean to have a name like Donald Cerrone on your resume? When it's all said and done, you're looking back to look down the list of people you fought and having him. He's a legend in the sport. To have him on your resume, what would that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, better than pretty much any win, against someone who wasn't a champion. I was saying he's probably the most decorated fighter in the UFC who's not a champ in terms of what he's accomplished. And especially as a striker. In MMA, a lot of guys like to just run and grab and hug. And I I'll be nice, but I never liked that style very much. And he's a good striker, a very good kickboxer. I fancy myself a kickboxer with a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So as a martial artist, it's more meaningful to me just as a person than really anything else. Plus, the resume is good. And, my students at home, probably the second biggest reason I do this stuff, fight in the UFC and take these challenges, is to just let my students, let my family, my friends all at home who I lead know that I've been in the trenches, I've been through the fire, and I've made it out on the other side.
And a fun bit of irony that you're taking a short notice fight against the guy who always takes short notice fights.
Yeah, this is the shortest notice of fights I've ever taken. I took one on a week's notice, and it was the first time Dana White did looking for a fight. And I took the fight there, and it was funny, on that fight card, I actually had the most experience. And on that fight card, it was crazy because Matt Schnell fought on that card, Ryan Spann fought on that card, Roberto Sanchez, Sage Northcutt, a lot of the guys who fought on the main card, we all got finishes and quick, and a lot of us got signed. That was a cool one. And I was the only guy whose name wasn't on Dana White's list because I took it so short notice. Excuse me. And after the fight, I was like, Dana, I'm the most experienced guys here. I took his fight short notice. I got the finish because he actually showed up after my fight. And he was flipping through his papers. He's like, I don't see you. And I was like, yeah, I took it late. And I gave him my information. And I was like, if not today, I'm confident I'll fight for you in the future. And then after that fight, I had a main event in Legacy against Baby Monster and knocked him out real bad. And then I fought for the belt and won. And then my UFC debut was a really short notice fight against a super veteran in Kyle Noak, one of Cowboys' teammates at the time. And even after I won that fight, I went to the back all tired and excited, and Cowboy actually complimented my footwork, which was cool. And just as a UFC rookie coming off a short notice debut win, I liked that compliment. Luke Rockhold gave me a really backhanded compliment too, because I was swinging real wild in that fight. He was like, "You just fought, you're the guy who threw those crazy overhands," and I was like, "Thanks, champ." He was a champ at the time. It was really cool. That was a fun experience.